We gave the fantasy football season. Here's the top 12 defense DST units. I'm ranking number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs. A great matchup this week at the Vegas Raiders. Gardner Minshew back in at quarterback. Aiden O'Connell went down with a broken thumb, and they just can't move the football or really make plays besides going through Brock Bowers. So Kansas City's been one of the best units in terms of giving up points per game. And this week, I think they could get pressure early and often on Gardner Minshew. And if they get off to a big lead, is this Chief team and make Vegas one-dimensional, this is where I believe they really could tee off. Number 2, the Denver Broncos. The Broncos, what a game it was for them last week. Big performance. This week, another great matchup. Carolina Panthers coming to town. We know they're one of the worst teams in all pro football. Bryce Young would turn the football over. They get sacked a decent amount as well. And this Panther team, besides Chuba Hubbard and Deontay Johnson at times, there's not much going on in this offense. It is not a huge threat. So Denver, like I said, they've been playing great defense over the last few weeks here. And once again, I think they go out there in a home game and put up some big points. Number 3, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Last week, the Steelers held down a pretty good New York Jet offense to 15 points. And this week, another New York team, the Giants, come in on Monday Night Football. So Pittsburgh, we know with TJ Watt, one of the best pass rushers in the game. They're going to get to the quarterback early and often. Minka Fitzpatrick, one of the better secondary guys in all pro football. And Hayward on the defensive line. So 3 key pieces to this defense. And this New York Giant team, I don't know if their offensive line is going to have an answer. We saw last week Daniel Jones, he got sacked a whole bunch in that ball game versus Philadelphia. And I think Pittsburgh is going to bring the same energy and the same type of results in this one. I'm not saying they're going to sack him 7-8 times in this game, but I could see 3-4 sacks, mid-teens, low 20s, holding this Giant offense down too, and creating a few turnovers. Number 4, the Detroit Lions, who is a 1-week use only. I like Detroit as an option this week. So now with DeAndre Hopkins traded away to the Kansas City Chiefs, another weapon off the board for this Tennessee Titan team. But DeAndre Hopkins, let's be honest, he wasn't doing much, and he most likely wanted out of there anyway in Tennessee. Now going to the Kansas City Chiefs to Detroit. I believe the game script, they're going to get off to an early lead. We saw Buffalo last week in the second half get off to a big lead, and then they started teeing off, and this Lion defense will go out there and put in a good game. Number 5, the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings, one of the best units in all pro football. I know last week they gave up 31 points to the Lions, but they still created turnovers and had a pick 6 in that ball game as well. So they get to the quarterback. They create turnovers, like I said. And now I know Cooper Kupp's coming back in tonight's ball game for this Los Angeles Ram team. But they're going to get to Matthew Stafford. You know, he's good for a few picks here and there at times, is Matthew Stafford. And he takes a lot of hits still in his mid-30s where he gets sacked a lot, is Matthew Stafford. And he's always been one of the more stacked quarterbacks in the league. Number 6, Los Angeles Chargers, a good matchup versus Saints. They get to the quarterback, is this Los Angeles Charger team. I know they're not creating a lot of turnovers, but getting sacks, teams low 20s every game, it seems like they're holding opposing offenses down to. And if this team could create a few turnovers, I believe they could be a top unit weekly. But like I said, they got to create the turnovers and get more sacks. Spencer Rattler's back in there, quarterback. I believe this Charger defense will tee you off in this one. Number 7, the Baltimore Ravens, so a 1-week use only streaming option. Baltimore's been in a lot of shootouts this season, and Jameis Winston in there, quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. So I think Winston, honestly, at this point, he might be better than Deshaun Watson in their NFL careers. Winston at least has a big arm. We know he's a gunslinger. Many years ago, thrown for 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions, where he just puts that football up, and whatever happens with that 50-50 ball. Versus this Raven defense, if they get off to an early start, you know, they're going to start teeing off, and that's where they really get things going. We saw last week Baker turn the football over a few times once Baltimore established the lead, and then the rest of the game was garbage time. So it could be a similar situation this week with this defense going out there and putting in a good performance. Number 8, the Green Bay Packers. The Packers, they've been one of the best units in all pro football, creating turnovers, holding teams down about 20 points per game. And last week we saw them hold down a good offense to 22 points in the Houston Texans, and also C.J. Stroud thrown under 100 yards, which is definitely a tough feat. So this week, going to Jacksonville, we know their offense has been a problem for the most part this season, but ever since Evan Ingram's returned, they've been pretty solid the last 2 games, is this offense for Jacksonville. But Trevor Lawrence, he's been holding on to the football a whole lot. He's been taking some big hits throughout the season, and he's good for a turnover or 2 as well, I believe, in this ball game. So like I said, Packers, they create turnovers. Besides Evan Ingram and Brian Thomas Jr., I think they can hold down, for the most part, this offense in this ball game. Number 9, the New York Jets. So the Jets, they definitely laid an egg last week of the Pittsburgh Steelers, where I thought this Jet defense could go in there, create some turnovers, and get to Russell Wilson. But Wilson had other things planned. Proved people wrong versus a good New York Jet defense, and he went out there and had a big ball game, leading the Steelers to a 37-15 victory. So this week in New England, the rookie Drake May back in there once again at quarterback. The first 2 games of his career, he's gone out there and he's put up decent numbers. But besides Hunter Henry and Ramondre Stevenson, to be honest, there's not much of a threat on this offense. So I think New York, they could get back to basics. We saw them early in the season trounce this New England Patriot team, holding them down in that ball game. And I think once again we could see similar results. Number 10, the Chicago Bears, Marcus Mariota most likely starting at quarterback for this Commander team. And this Bears defense, one of the underrated defenses in all the league. They hold opponents down, a lot of field goals getting this season and not punching it into the end zone. And this week at Washington, with Mariota quarterback, it's definitely a possibility Chicago could beat this top 10 ranking. They could get to the quarterback early and often. There's not much in the passing game besides Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz, his consistent options. And I know the running back room's good over there with Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, but I believe the Chicago Bear team with Mariota quarterback, they're going to get pressure on him early and often and try to make him one-dimensional. And Mariota, no doubt about it, last week went out there and had a good game. But that was the Carolina Panthers, number 11, the Houston Texans, so a decent matchup this week versus the Indianapolis Colts. Anthony Richardson, he's been taking big hits all season long in the few games he started this season. He's been a turnover machine, and he's not really putting points on the board. So with all those factors, even though I know week 1 was a shootout between these 2 teams, I think the Texans in a home game after the last 2 on the road keep Anthony Richardson and this offense limited, even if Jonathan Taylor returns in this ball game. And I think there'll be a top 12 option. And the 12th and final defense, DST, I'm ranking is the San Francisco 49ers. So we know their offense is depleted. No Deebo Samuel, no Brandon Ayuk. Jawan Jennings might not even play in this ball game as well, and George Kittle banged up. But they're going to try to win this game on defense, and Dak Prescott's had a bad track record over the last few seasons versus San Francisco 49er defense. So San Francisco, bad loss last week. Kansas City came in, dominated in that ball game. And this week here, we'll see if the Dallas Cowboys can move the football, but I don't believe they're going to move it effectively in this one, where I believe San Francisco will win this game. It might be low scoring between the 2 teams. We'll get to Dak Prescott a couple times and a few turnovers I think they'll create as well with Dak. The interceptions are back up this season, so that's the top 12 defense DST units I'm ranking for week 8 of the fantasy football season.